there's a Republican named Jason Chaffetz, and he has actually started to push to end nonprofit status for the NFL. Now, he specifically introduced a bill, uncoincidentally, around the time of the big game, to eliminate the nonprofit status of not only the NFL, but also the NHL and the PGA. Now, the NBA and the Major League Baseball are actually not tax exempt, the NBA never having the status, and of course, the MLB giving it up around 2007, 2008. Now, Jason Chaffetz, or Representative Chaffetz, said, quote, "In reality, the NFL and the NHL are for-profit businesses, and they should be taxed as such. They are not charities, nor are they traditional trade organizations like local chambers of commerce." And by the way, Tom Coburn is also pushing this the same sort of bill in the Senate. So Tom Coburn and Jason Chaffetz are definitely there fighting against the tax-exempt status of the NFL and NHL. So getting into how much money the NFL makes. Well, how much do they make? In revenue, they make roughly around $10 billion a year. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell is actually hoping to increase that to $25 billion a year by 2027. Now, Goodell made about $30 million back in 2011, and I just want to ask you guys, does that sound like an industry that needs to be tax exempt? Now, Tom Coburn wrote that, quote, "Hardworking taxpayers should not be forced to provide funding to offset tax giveaways to lucrative major professional sports teams and leagues." According to Tom Coburn, the NFL paid $51.5 million to just 8 executives in 2010. He also said that taxpayers were losing as much as $91 million a year subsidizing professional sports leagues because of their nonprofit status. Now, the teams themselves are taxed. Just to let you know, every team is taxed, but the league itself, the brand itself, is not taxed. Now, Steve Stanek, who's a research fellow at the Heartland Institute and the managing editor of the organization's Budget and Tax News publication, said that, quote, "We have the absurdity of a pro sports league owned by multimillionaires and multi-billionaires, most of whose workers are paid hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars per year, bringing in billions of dollars and calling itself a nonprofit." So how do they get away with it? Well, according to a petition from Professor Larry Lessig's group Root Strikers, which, by the way, Larry Lessig, awesome, quote, "The NFL has spent $3.6 million in lobbying in recent years and contributed more than $1.6 million to members of Congress. It leads all professional sports leagues in lobbying expenditures. No wonder Senator Coburn has yet to gain the support of his colleagues, or at least many of his colleagues." So I wanted to ask you guys, I wanted to go to the panel and ask, what do you think about this push to end tax-exempt status for the NFL itself? And we'll start with you, Sean.
Obviously, Congressman Chaffetz of Utah is just upset because he doesn't have an NFL team in Utah, and I think he should just go away. No, but in all seriousness, like, it's crazy to me that the NFL is not taxed, and I realize that it's the organization and not the team, but still, like, if Major League Baseball and the NBA, who never had this status, aren't taxed, like, the NFL is no different from those leagues, except it's more successful. And I mean, I understand why they're lobbying. They're also lobbying for the concussion thing, but I understand why they're lobbying to keep their tax exempt status, but like, obviously, like, you got to treat them like every other team. And you call them nonprofits. They're technically not registered as nonprofits. It's a 501(c)(3) thing, which is just for the trade organizations. It's technically like a little different category. But
you are correct, yeah.
Than like the Red Cross or whatever. But like, we need to like overhaul our entire tax code, because the fact that the National Football League, which is the most successful sports like league in the United States, is somehow exempt from taxation because they found this loophole. Like, we just need to get rid of like all these ridiculous loopholes. I can't believe that they're a trade organization. And do they really, in all seriousness, do they really enhance the game of football by covering up concussions, which the minor leagues of football, college football, uses their data. So I'm not interested in this at all. Like they need to be treated like everyone else.
Yeah. So let's start off by saying the last story we covered. We mentioned Tom Coburn was one of the guys who put forth the alternative to Obamacare after Obamacare has been in law for however many years. So one, we kind of bashed him for that, but also a little bit of props for that, for actually finally being one of the guys who puts forth a comprehensive alternative and doesn't just cry about how they put forth the alternative. He's also one of the guys who's lobbying. He's pushing against this tax-free NFL status. So hey, Tom Coburn, for someone who is traditionally as crazy right-wing as he is, he's on a roll, man. We'll take progress where we can get it. But yeah, I think this is part of a bigger problem. It's not just the NFL. The whole outrage over the IRS coming after Tea Party groups who are seeking tax-exempt status. One, anybody who's followed that knows that wasn't the case. It was a self-proclaimed conservative who ordered that criteria in the first place so he could more efficiently make these judgments. But anyway, we are so willing to give tax-exempt status to organizations in America. Like, I don't care if you're conservative or liberal. If you're a political organization and trying to influence a vote, you shouldn't be tax exempt. If you're a sports organization, you shouldn't be tax exempt. Charities should be tax exempt. Period. That's it. And hey, I'm the Christian in the room. If you're a church making political, preaching political sermons, you shouldn't be tax exempt either. If you're not, I think you should, because churches do a ton of charitable work. But anyway, so all this is to say, not only does this show like how just willy-nilly we are with tax exempt status, but a further indictment of us as Americans is this: actual charities who are tax exempt, if their CEOs make more than a couple $100,000 a year, we are irate. There's Facebook memes about don't give to this charity. They pay their CEO this much money, and hey, that's a discussion you can have. Dan Pallotta, who has a background in charity, gave an excellent TED talk. I don't necessarily agree with him, but a very provocative, thought-provoking. Sorry to use the same word twice. Talk about like how we have these double standards with charity that we don't have with business. And if you really care about charity, you want your best talent in charity. Raised some good points. Don't know I agree with him, but anyway, the point is, in America, there's outrage if a charity pays its CEO a lot of money. But anyway, Roger Goodell made a $1 salary in 2011, but got a bonus of $29.5 million. So or excuse me, no, he got a bonus of $22 million. Ended up making a total salary of $29.5 through other deals or whatever. So like, we're totally okay with you being tax exempt and paying your CEO $30 million if you're not working for the greater good. If you're working for the greater good and you're tax exempt, you pay your CEO a 6-digit figure. We get insane about how you're not spending our money where we think you're spending it. There's just so many double standards we have around this story. And then one of the objections to this is that things like the NFL Network, stuff like that currently aren't tax exempt, team revenue, stuff like that didn't tax exempt. They're saying, well, hey, if you don't keep the NFL tax exempt, then we're going to be paying taxes twice, because we're going to pay taxes on the NFL Network revenue, and then whenever that trickles up to the NFL, we're going to pay taxes again. You know what I say? Great. You're paying your back taxes for these 4 decades, 3 decades, however long it's been, of being tax exempt. Pay it twice, damn it.
I don't want to get into the salary of Goodell. Goodell is paid by the owners to maximize profits for the owners, and the fact is he's done a great job at that, so they pay him a lot of money. Like, it's not a big deal to me that he makes a lot of money. What I would
profit.
Yeah, and that was my point. If a charitable CEO is really good at raising money and doing good things in the world, we don't care. If he gets paid a lot of money, we get irate. Roger Goodell is great at his job. He's made a lot of money for these owners, but we're totally fine with him making $30 million.
But he's the commissioner of like the entire NFL. Like what a commissioner is paid by the owners, and the owners are taxed, right? Their profits are taxed on their own teams. He's paid by
if you give your money to a nonprofit organization, that's not taxed.
Right.
That's why you seek tax-exempt status.
I get what you're saying, but the owner, to me, like I think it should be treated the same. I mean, Major League Baseball makes money hand over fist, and they seem to have no problem without this tax-exempt status for MLB as a brand. But I'm saying, like, Roger Goodell, I'm not too concerned about it.
But it's really kind of to make it's really kind of bringing up his salary kind of makes a point. See, we use that to try and make a point that they can afford to not have tax-exempt status.
Right. The NFL is the most profitable of all the sports leagues. They treat their employees, the players, the worst out of all the major sports leagues. And I'm talking NBA, NFL, and MLB. And they should be treated like the NBA and the NFL. Like there's nothing exceptionally charitable or exceptionally unique about the NFL that separates them from Major League Baseball or the NBA.
I just wanted to make one thing about Tom Coburn. Going back to him, I'm actually really glad to see that he's pushing for this. See, a lot of people tend to make the assumption that we're anti-Republican just to be anti-Republican, right? And that we're anti-conservative to be anti-conservative. No, we're not. We go after Republicans a lot because they do a lot of stupid things, at least in our opinion, right? But we actually are giving them credit when they do something that actually makes sense. And this is what Tom Coburn is actually doing with this, is that this makes a lot of sense for so many different reasons. And so going after, like it was mentioned here, just, what Sean said, one of the most profitable sports league in the entire nation, and they're tax exempt because they're a trade organization? That just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, well, and let me bring this in too. This is the big thing. We've kind of hinted at. They don't promote football as a whole. Now they do by virtue of free market forces, because the NFL is what you aspire to. So that does it trickles down to peewee, high school, college, because you're aiming for the NFL. It doesn't promote the sport because people want to play the sport. It promotes the sport because these kids get it in their head they can play for the NFL. So even though it does, there is a splash. There is a collateral benefit. It's all for the greater good of the NFL. But the other thing too is, I don't want to get in trouble here and name names, but I work for an IT company. So let's say my company, we'll call them IJ. For Iulit Jackard, they get tax-exempt status as a trade organization because they're promoting everything they sell, right? That would be insane. But that's what the NFL is doing. They promote their brand and their product. And you say, well,
there was another, to build on your example, there was another league that attempted to get into football to create their own league, and of course it wasn't promoted by the NFL. If the NFL was an actual trade organization, they would also go to promote that other league. So it just shows that using the label of trade organization when it comes to the NFL it's wrong.
Yeah. Whenever Vince McMahon started the XFL back, however many years ago, how many timeouts from the action did you see NFL announcers take to promote the XFL?
Exactly.
Or even arena football, which is kind of not so much a farm league, but a recuperation league for hurt NFL players. They're not promoting the sport, man. They're promoting their brand in the same way that if IBM got tax exempt status and used it to promote their products, they could say, oh well, we're promoting IT because we provide all these products in IT. No, you're promoting your brand. That's what the NFL is doing, and it only helps the sport itself, by virtue of the way the world works. There's no active promotion of football.
To be fair to the NFL, when the XFL did exist, they did let them use the same stadiums for games and all that. There was another league way back when I'm gonna guess it was the UFL. I might not.
It might have been the UFL.
I might be wrong, and they did not promote that league at all. They were competing with them. But now that I think about it, you know who deserves this tax status if the what you call it, if the requirement is that you promote every aspect of the game? Major League Baseball. Because Major League Baseball has academies in Venezuela, Dominican Republic. They support the Japanese leagues. They support all these different leagues around the world. And they give up their status. So if Major League Baseball had to give up their status and the NFL is not as friendly to other leagues around the world as baseball is, then there's no way the NFL could keep it.
That is an excellent point. And I do also want to say, you brought up something I meant to talk about. I'm glad you said it. The other thing, because the NFL, they're this tax-exempt organization, but you brought up them not letting the UFL or whoever it was play in their stadiums over the past couple decades. The NFL isn't even paying to build these stadiums. The cities are. So you've got a tax-exempt organization not paying for the stadiums they make their money in. The taxpayer, it's just this double whammy of them, like of the taxpayers, whether they're football fans or not, and any good American is a football fan. Sorry, Jeff. But whether they're football fans or not, we're subsidizing this thing. It's all coming out of our pocket, and like as much as I love football, that's ridiculous. We can't have that.
To the tune of $91 million.
Yeah.
A year, and there are some estimates that show that it's at least $108 billion a year.
No,
and
it's insane.
We're subsidizing the NFL so that they could make obscene profits. Why?
There's no logical explanation for it, and hey, props. I very, very rarely agree with anything he does. Props to Tom Coburn for bringing this up.
Mm-hmm. And Chaffetz? Jason Chaffetz? Props to him.
Yeah, I really don't know that guy, but good for him too.
Yeah, and to anybody, of course, any politician or anybody that comes to support this bill, like I had mentioned earlier, Lawrence Lessig, who's really, really good on money and politics, and somebody who I agree with a lot on a lot of these issues. He's also backing it with his group Root Strikers, and so that shows that there can be a real bipartisan sort of consensus on this, that this is a waste of money and the NFL should be taxed.